Good day, folks. It's Tony Fortunato from the technology firm. Today we're going to look at a firewall issue, and we're also going to look at multi-trace packet analysis. I've broken this whole thing up to a whole bunch of little videos, so you don't have to sit there for 30 or 40 minutes, and you can pick whichever one suits your purpose. So here's a drawing of what we're going to be working with. I strongly encourage you to document before you start plugging tools in, and just as a basic workflow tip for troubleshooting. It doesn't have to be a fancy one. It doesn't have to be graphical like this. It could just be a post-it note, a napkin, a scrap piece of paper, your arm, your friend's back, whatever you got. You should draw out where the client is, where the destination is, where the tool is, and any kind of ports that are associated with each. In this case, we've got a client here on the left. Red cable goes into this port. Red cable comes out of this port back to the switch port into the firewall, and then the outside port on the firewall back into this tap and back out to the internet. Now what's important here is this guy right here. This laptop in the middle is going to have two Ethernet ports. It's going to have its built-in Ethernet port, and it's also going to be using another port. You can use a docking station, dongle. Please make sure you baseline them, find out how much latency it adds. Some of them add a tremendous amount of latency and not worth having. I also encourage you to make sure that you document all of the addresses from the client to the firewall to the internet. You would see that in one of my other slides from my other videos, where I actually put the MAC addresses of all the devices on there as well. Just make sure you document as much as you can so you don't get confused, and if you come back later, you'll know exactly what you were connected to. So here we are, we're at the Network Critical SmartNA GUI, and from this screen you can do basically your full configuration, or you can use a CLI as well, whatever you're used to. And again, we're going to work on this section right now as an example, and that was the port that the client is connected to. That's the port that goes back to the switch, and C is where I'm going to have my laptop connected to with a dongle. So what I did ahead of time was, if I click here, for example, I've actually put descriptions on these ports so I don't get confused. Client Ethernet, client switch port, and then this is my laptop dongle with Wireshark. Okay. The reason why that's important is if you're working with a bunch of people or you're working remotely, you got to keep this straight. I've already messed this up a few times, and it's just me, so you really should document those ports. So the first thing we have to do is you have to make sure traffic can go between these two ports when you obviously connect that laptop and that switch. So what we're going to do is click and drag, and I put a little arrow, click and drag, and I put an arrow. There you go. Now I want the traffic from A to go to C, so I'm just going to drag and drop. Good. And then I want, same thing, B, drag and drop. Depending on what you want, you might want unidirectional, bidirectional, whatever. But this is a pretty good start. And then the last thing you do is apply the changes. And that's how it works with this specific tool. So I encourage you to go find out with your packet broker, your taps, your whatever you got, how does it work. The GUI obviously makes it a lot easier to use, but just make sure that you've got it documented so whoever you work with isn't fumbling around too much.